You might find my life a little bit interesting, I think. So I grew up very poor for the first 4.5 years of my life. So I starved. I went out in winter. I was locked out of the house in winter. Raped, beaten, locked in a basement with spiders. These guys from Chicago would terrorize my family. Yeah. So my dad worked really hard to get us out of poverty, and he did so fairly quickly. I'm assuming he told somebody about what was happening, and then they helped him out, gave him a new position at his work or whatever. The complex thing is that he didn't really do it the right way, but I won't get into that right now. Anyway, by the time I was 4.5, I was at a new house, and it had a pool, it had a cherry tree, it had a giant pine tree, it had two giant sort of pine tree bushes in the front. I don't know what they were called. They were just bush trees, is what I called them. But they were really tall, and they were shaped a certain way. To give entrance to the driveway. Anyway. So I grew up very rich after growing up very poor. I had all the toys that I wanted. I had all the electronics. I had all the devices and the mechanical devices that I wanted. I had Lincoln Logs, Legos, all the normal stuff. Train tracks. You name it. I had all of it. All the toys and whatever you might want. Anyway, I was satisfied with playing outside in the yard and playing with the toys that I had for a while. And then after a while, once I got a little bit older, I started becoming more interested in women. Obviously, because when you grow up, you become more interested in women. So I had sex for the first time when I was 12 years old. And for the second time when I was 13. And then I had sex in high school at various different times. Yeah. You might say that's because you were rich, but the only reason we were rich is because, well, I shouldn't get into it, but I was basically just a slave. We're all slaves in a way. We're all wage slaves, right? But this is a different kind of slave. I'm not sure which is worse. Probably this one, I assume. I've wage slaved before, and it takes away from you, but might be better than whatever sex slavery is. Anyway, that's sort of how I grew up. And I grew up reading a lot of books from the age of 6 to 8, mainly. That's how I learned how to write so well. I knew how to write by the time I was 8, and I always focused on books fantasy mostly. But it was sort of interesting reading books about mechanics too. At my grandpa's house. My grandpa, he burned me when I got things wrong. He burned me with salt and vinegar, lightly, like not very much, but very lightly. And so I have markings on my body that aren't not always visible, but if I don't eat enough, or if the sun burns me too much, you can kind of see them a little bit. You can still probably see them, but it's basically if I don't eat much and I start looking weaker, you can see the sunken, burned markings or the raised burned markings, because when you burn somebody, it raises or sinks. Anyway, so I put together a clock when I was a kid, but that's about all I did at my grandpa's. I also worked on toy trains. I set them up and got them running, and I learned how to play piano. I still don't know what the keys are called, but but I do know how to make a song. Maybe not repeat the song, but I was never very good at piano. Anyway, they didn't teach me very well. Grew up very rich. Just to give you some perspective, the pool was 8 or 9 feet deep. About 8.5 feet deep. Yeah, that's all I have to share for now. Just a little bit about my upbringing. All right.